Hello everyone, it's Brian here. Despite the sound of my voice, I am feeling much, much better today. So thank you to everyone who left a comment expressing your concern or offering me your best wishes. I really appreciate it. I'm past the worst of it, which means I can now focus on the rest of my life, which today is part 2 of my kind of ridiculous effort to rank my favorite 200 Canadian songs of all time. So if you didn't see part 1, or even if you did, I'll just reiterate the key parameter I set for myself, which is to only include one song by each artist. So the reason I did that is because otherwise you would see the same bands and the same even albums recurring many, many times. And I thought that would be a little bit boring. This way, I'm going to talk about 200 different Canadian songs. Now, I'm fully aware that the songs that are at the bottom of this list are songs that would be even further down if I included more tracks from each artist, but I didn't include anything here that I didn't like. So one thing I didn't mention in the first video was that I knew going into this that there were certain albums that contain tracks that I really like that I'm missing from my collection, and I decided not to buy them or try to buy them because I thought that would be a little artificial. I wanted this to be sort of a reflection of my collection at the time, and there may be reasons why I don't have them. So I decided to stick with what I have rather than trying to, buy other albums to include. Similarly, I didn't do research into bands that I know of but never followed in hopes of including those songs, so I didn't do that either. If I didn't know it then, I don't want to learn about them now and include it. I did spend some time listening to certain tracks if I hadn't heard them in a long time, and sometimes that improved my opinion of the song and sometimes it didn't. So this is where we are. Now I will just add one more thing before we start. In the previous video, I did mention that I'm not really a country music fan, so there's no country music, and I mentioned Celine Dion by name as someone who's not on this list. So at the start of each of these, I'm going to mention 2 or 3 bands or artists that are not on this list. It's kind of like a spoiler. So number 1 is Nickelback. There is no Nickelback on this list. So it's not even a band I know very much about. I know certain people like them. Just have never really paid attention to them. I've only heard a couple songs on the radio, so Nickelback is not on this list. And secondly, Glass Tiger is not on this list. Now, if Daryl, the Northern Vinyl guy, is watching, he just got a double stab in the heart. I'm sorry about that. It's just 2 bands that I never really was interested in. So, having said all that, let's move into number 190. I've got my list here of songs, and there are a couple of people on this list who weren't born in Canada. This is one of them. He was born in London in the UK and moved to Canada, was raised in Vancouver, and that is Nick Gilder. This is someone that James Griffiths had on his list of top 10. So this is the album called City Nights, and the song I'm referring to is Hot Child in the City. You might see it there, right here, Hot Child in the City. Now this is a pop or glam kind of singer, and I'm including him because it does bring back a lot of nostalgia for me. As a kid, I listened to the radio a lot, just like an AM radio. This song got played a lot. Even now it gets some radio play over here, and that may be to do with CanCon regulations, that's Canadian content regulations, where a certain percentage of a certain percentage of the songs played on radio have to be Canadian, however that's defined, and this guy gets a lot of airplay still. Not everyone likes this record. The Globe and Mail, as I discovered, dismissed it as being really basic, didn't like the guitar work or anything, but it could be just that the song has a great deal of nostalgia for me that I included it. So it's on, I think this is the right way up, Chrysalis. There we go. Nick Gilder. So at number 189, I'm going with Crash Test Dummies. This is the album God Shuffled His Feet. They're from Winnipeg. This album came out in 1993. I'll show you what this looks like here. So Winnipeg, I guess you'd call them alt-rock. Maybe that's the best description, but very mainstream. This might be one of the most mainstream artists on my list. Well, there's a couple others, I suppose. Their second record, and the song I'm choosing from this record is called Brad Roberts sings on that very, very low register. You might not be able to see it there. I mean, I guess their first big hit was Superman song, probably. I did see them do a free show around this time, which was quite interesting. Oh, I should show you this too. They're all decked out in this really interesting lyrics on one side. interesting costumes here. Yeah, so as I said, alt rock, but maybe a little bit of folk, but mainstream. Kind of interesting. And this is one of the songs I recently listened to because I almost dismissed it, and I thought, well, let me listen to that track. And the video is kind of interesting, and I did remember watching it that I did like it at the time. I still do like it, but it's obviously way down the list. So number 188, we have this, I almost said Canadian, everything here is Canadian. So The Tenants, this is their debut record, self-titled, called The Tenants, from 1983. And this is a new wave band with a bit of reggae. So if you're thinking The Police, you're on the right track. Many people accuse this band of being clones of The Police. Even the singer's voice is in the same register as Sting, it seems. So there's obviously parallels to be drawn. I don't know if they were actively borrowing from The Police or not. There's a track on here called Sheriff, which is the 4th track on side A. So I might have to say something about the word sheriff, because in most parts of Canada, apart from Alberta, the sheriff is really someone involved in court security and prisoner transport and court orders, unlike the depiction of sheriffs you often see in the United States with wearing the badge and the hat and trying to catch bad guys. That's not what the sheriff does in most parts of Canada. They're really more of an administrative person. So if you were evicted, you'd often find a note on your door from the sheriff telling you to get out. I don't even know if they wear a uniform. I'm not sure. But the song is actually about the fact that he can't pay the rent. In fact, at one point he sings, "I'm the tenant, he's no friend," which I find interesting because they reference their name. I'm the tenant, the tenants. So kind of funny. But yeah, a bit derivative of The Police, but kind of an enjoyable track. The video is kind of cool too because it shows you vintage scenes of Toronto. In fact, there's a scene that takes place in a record pressing plant where the band is actually packaging up this particular record and putting it into boxes as it comes down the conveyor belt, which is kind of interesting. And this is an epic release. Okay, The Tenants. Police clones in some ways. Okay, so next, I'm choosing a band that I believe only MGK Boston is aware of, because I mentioned this band before and he piped up to say that he knew them because they're from Ottawa, and of course he spent some time in Ottawa. This is Screaming Bamboo, which is a new wave band, and this is called World of Tomorrow, which is their debut EP. They did release a full-length record and then they were done. They still have a Bandcamp page selling digital copies of their songs, but from this particular record I am choosing as number 187, World of Tomorrow from 1984. All right, so yeah, a new wave band probably adequately describes it. If I'm thinking of a comparison, I would say maybe a more unpolished or unsophisticated Martha and the Muffins. It has a female lead singer. Sometimes when I'm listening to them, I get that sort of Martha and the Muffins vibe. And it's on a record label that I don't think I have another one from this record label. It's called Dad's Favorite Records, which makes me laugh. So yeah, kind of an obscure band, really. MGK is the only one who's ever said he's aware of them, which is kind of interesting. So I don't think anyone I know knows that band. Okay, number 186, we're going to some classic rock from Canada, from Winnipeg again. This is Bachman Turner Overdrive, or BTO, formed by the Bachman brothers and some dude named Turner, I forget his name. So in 1971, or around that time, Randy Bachman left the Guess Who and formed Bachman Turner Overdrive. This came out in 74. I don't have to tell you anything about BTO because I think you already know. There they are. And I'm choosing the track You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet. I mean, they had a number of radio staples that you still hear. All of them are kind of interesting. This one, I suppose, does remind me of my older siblings. This is a band that would have gotten played when I was a kid in the house. So You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet from BTO. Then we move on to number 185. Which is from the Holly Cole Trio. This is called Girl Talk, and this was released in 1990. And boy, did I ever have a shock when I looked this up on Discogs. This pressing sells for more than $100, and I was absolutely floored. I had no idea. I guess 1990, in the death of vinyl era. Every track on here is a cover version. They're a jazz trio, so you've got stand-up bass, piano, and then Holly singing. and they're quite good, I would say. I'm not sure how many records they did, but Holly Cole herself recorded many solo records, including, I think, one was released last year, but heavily cover songs. So the song I'm choosing here is called Girl Talk, the second track on the record. Who wrote that? It is Neil Hefty and Bobby Troop. There you go, on Alert Records, Canadian record label. I will treat that one gently because it seems to be worth some money these days. Now, number 184, I've chosen a track from, again, this is someone who, the lead singer here is actually another person born in England but then moved to Canada. So this is Platinum Blonde, who started out as a punk band in the late 70s, I think 1977, and then transitioned to more of a new wave band. And I've mentioned them before. Look at these fantastic outfits. They had, I think, the advantage of being popular at a time, and what time is this? 1983, when music video was really important. Although we didn't have MTV up here, and we got much music later, there were all sorts of after-school music shows, and their videos were played relentlessly on those shows because they looked like this. People were interested in them. But I think the band still continues, with Mark Holmes being the only original member. Sorry, I think they formed in 79, not 77. Anyway, I should tell you the track I'm choosing, which is the lead-off track called Doesn't Really Matter. Now, in 1984, the only Canadian band that was outselling Platinum Blonde was Rush, believe it or not. And here is the inner sleeve with their fantastic hair, which I think I'm jealous of right now. So yeah, when I said new wave, but I would say with a glam style of new wave, if that makes any sense. So there you go. That was I think that's their debut record. There was an EP that came before it. 1983. Okay, now this is someone who I've never really been a huge fan of. I came to this artist really, really late in my life, and so I never really counted her among my favorites, but you might be surprised by that. It's Joni Mitchell. This is Court and Spark from 1974. So I always thought of her as music for the older generation. When I encountered her music as a young person, it didn't really appeal to me. It was a little too folky. Maybe I found it at the wrong time, and it seemed to me that older people listened to her music, and I was not interested. I would say I'm more interested in her music now, but even then I have a handful of records that I got in a thrift store. So not my favorite singer, but I actually appreciated her. So the track I'm choosing here is called Raised on Robbery. I mean, there's lots of songs you could choose from this person, but Raised on Robbery. Let's have a gatefold here. So I did find this at a thrift shop, which was a kind of a cool find one day. And here we go. Yeah, it seemed to me that my siblings' friends' older brothers or sisters were listening to her, but not anyone I knew. And I think if I showed up at high school with that, I'd have been laughed at. So, all right, now we've got number 182. I've chosen a singer called Andrew Cash. There he is. Andrew Cash is a really interesting person because he was formerly a member of a Canadian punk band called L'Étranger, and he went solo. In fact, the song I'm choosing from here is called Time and Place, which is a re-recording of the L'Étranger song Time and Place. This came out in 88, so I should have known that, 88. Not only was he a singer, he became a member of Parliament. In fact, he was my MP, member of Parliament, for years. Weirdly, his bandmate from L'Étranger, Charlie Angus, also became a member of Parliament. So there was a time when two former punk guys were in Parliament at the same time, which I thought was really interesting. And then he lost, and I'm not sure what he's doing now, but he released he's released other records, like with that punk band, but solo, and then with his brother. Kind of an interesting guy. I met him, of course, because he'd be doing door-to-door canvassing to get support for his election. And it's on this Island label. So it's interesting to have, two guys singing about social issues and then having a chance to go to Parliament to try and work on those, which is funny. But I think Charlie Angus also retired, so Andrew Cash. So that's 182. Now, number 181, and the last one for today, is a reasonably recent acquisition that you might have noticed I got if you look back a few videos. Someone I didn't really know about, but the relentless discussion of him by Rob at Northern Revolutions encouraged me to get this, and I saw this in a used bin at a store for a good price, and I decided to give it a try. It's Adam Baldwin, and I'm sure if Rob was doing this listing, his ranking of 200 Canadian songs, this would be much farther up. But it's here because, firstly, I haven't had enough time to spend with it, and secondly, I'm not sure it exactly works with my musical taste. It's interesting. So I'm choosing the song "Lighthouse at Little Lorraine," which is a song apparently about maritime drug running. There's the gatefold. He is from Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, and has worked with other Canadian artists. I won't go into that. If you just go to Rob's channel, I'm sure you can find something about him if you want. So yeah, the album's called Concertos and Serenades from 2022, and I've chosen, as I said, The Lighthouse at Little Lorraine, which I think is actually pretty good, but I'm still early on in that record. If I did this ranking a few years from now, maybe it would be higher or something like that. So we're not really sure. Anyway, that is part 2 of my favorite 200 Canadian songs. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.